WDET-FM, I'm Tia Graham. The winter months are often marked by the holidays and the new year. Yet, it's often lost on most people that domestic violence incidents trend up during this time of year. The warning signs for domestic violence intensify during this time of year. So what are the signs, and how can we, as community members, step up in to protect survivors of domestic violence? Here to discuss domestic violence during the winter months and resources is co-executive director of the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Assault, Cherie Thomas. Cherie, welcome back to the Metro.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, I want to begin our conversation with a clip from a recent conversation I had with Ann Mantha. She is the Chief Philanthropy Officer at Haven Oakland, a nonprofit serving survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Oakland County. And from Haven Oakland talks about what the numbers say about increases in domestic violence incidents during this time of year.
Yeah, a study in 2023 showed that U.S. emergency departments found that 15% of all assault-related injury visits occurred during the holiday periods, with New Year's Eve often showing the highest incidence. So certainly we do see a higher incidence of intimate partner violence during this time.
Now, Cherie, why does domestic violence incidents, or why do they occur more in winter months and the holidays, especially right now?
Yeah, I think we have a greater awareness of domestic violence happening in the winter months and during the holidays. A big part of the reason why that happens is because people are in close proximity to themselves during that time, right? So you have families who are home because schools are closed. So caregivers are home with the kids while schools are closed, and they're caring for them. And they're trying to create an environment of safety in a place that's unsafe. So whereas you would have these breaks of time where you weren't spending all this time with this person and you're able to mitigate some of the harm, now you're in close proximity and it makes it harder to mitigate. And so now things that you were able to do to keep yourself and to keep your children safe in an environment that isn't safe, you're having to do double time. And all of that extra work, unfortunately, leads to greater victimization and people having to seek resources. And it's cold as hell outside, right? When I say it's cold outside, I mean, you have to think about what it means for a person to leave the warmth of their home, the comfort of their home, and seek shelter, right? People don't think about shelter in the sense that shelters are not hotels, right? And when I say they're not hotels, I mean, like, they are not the Hyatt. They are not the Renaissance, right? They are places that literally provide a warm place for you or your children to be safe. There are no extra accommodations in that way. So people aren't leaving their home to go to some place that is going to be extravagant, that is going to provide all of these extra amenities. It is literally a safe space, right? Now, I will say that the majority of shelter programs do a fairly good job of trying to recreate a home environment, but it's not a home environment. It's an environment where it's meant to provide you what you need as a stepping stone to get to your own place of safe and comfort. But those things are also dwindling in this time right now. So wintertime is a really hard month. And we've also seen, loss of life from people trying to stay in their cars and things during winter months because shelters get full. There is no place to go. Family members don't feel safe in taking them in. And it makes it increasingly difficult for people.
So let's just talk about the invisible nature of domestic abuse in connection to the cold weather months. What factors contribute once again during this time? You talked about it just a little bit, but oftentimes we don't notice it because it is an invisible situation that could be happening.
Yeah, well, interesting enough, while we like to think of domestic violence as this invisible thing that's happening, it's actually very clear when it's happening. It's a matter of, are we in a position where we're willing to intervene, right? So when a family member, a friend, or someone's experiencing domestic violence, you often see them isolated. So they aren't spending as much time with you as they normally would, right? When we talk about signs, that's a sign, the isolation. People deviating from the way in which you know them to interact and engage with life, right? When those things shift, those are signs that things are changing, that things are different. They can be a variety of different reasons why. But when we know that they have a new partner in their life and this shift is occurring, it's a little like, let's think about that. What's happening? Should I reach out to Tia or Cherie and see what's going on with them, right? That's one of the things. When we think about how people are going to work, right? So, do you drive to work on a regular? If you do drive to work on a regular, are you now being accompanied by your partner to work? Is your partner taking you to work? Do you have access to your vehicle anymore, right?
Wow.
Do you have access to your finances? I mentioned before, direct deposit is a beautiful thing. I love direct deposit. Most people do, right? Because you're supposed to get paid on Friday. I always tell people you get paid on Friday, payday is Friday. But then people look on Wednesdays and Thursdays for that direct
Yes,
deposit,
of course.
right?
Yes, of course.
Right. In an abusive relationship, your partner is too,
Yeah.
right? And so if they understand your banking patterns and if they have access to your banking patterns, they have access to those funds too. And it's really hard, particularly if you're in a married relationship, to get somebody off of the account who has access to that account, right?
Now, Sharia, I do want to bring in because you're talking right now about the accounts and fund, and I'm thinking about holiday season, of course, and this is the time of year where money is really in and out and it's fluctuating. What does that do to the family unit when we do have a financial stressor that is now inside of the situation?
Yeah, in a healthy relationship, we're stressed and we're stressed together, right? We know we have $5 and we got to make it stretch like it's 10. We understand that. In an unhealthy relationship, the burden is put on the person who's being harmed to ensure one, that money is coming in and that the person who's causing harm has access to those funds, right? So there's a shifting that occurs. Also, too, there's this need for gift giving, right? We live in this society where gift giving is a thing.
Yes.
And although it's not a need, so to speak, it's a need, right?
Yes.
Those kids are looking for those gifts. They're excited because Santa is going to come, right? And so when you're in a relationship where it's unsafe for you, the ability to freely go and buy gifts is not yours to do, right? Those things are dictated and controlled by someone else. So typically when we think about domestic violence, we only think about the physical aspects, right? We want to see the black eye, the broke leg, or something like that. It's deeper than that. That can be present, but the pieces when we talk about the invisibility are the finances, the emotional distress, the psychological distress, the utilizing of the children. Maybe you're supposed to have them this holiday and now you're not. I'm keeping them. And what are you going to do about it? Right. So all of these different pieces come into play during this holiday season and during this cold weather.
And listening to you talk about some of the scenarios and things that are happening, I'm not saying that all people can relate to what you're saying, but I think enough of us know situations or have heard of situations or seen things like this happening within a relationship that we can, that we're connected with. And, there's just not much that we know what to say or what to do. And we're going to come back to those solutions and how the community can impact and step in to help survivors. But I do want to stay with the family unit for a moment. Once again, it's the holiday season. It's winter months. We're seeing a lot of kids off for winter break. We're going to see, the holidays are just here. And it impacts the children just as much as it impacts those who are being, who are the survivors of the domestic violence. So could you talk about just the developmental struggles for the children, especially during these winter months, being locked in those situations?
Yeah, just this morning I read this post on emotional well-being and emotional regulation. When a child is in a home where violence is occurring, it's hard to emotionally regulate, right? So you're talking about a child who people want to associate a lot of the behaviors that you may see to attention deficit disorder and things of that nature. Sometimes it's just the fact that they live in an unsafe household, right? They can't concentrate. They're tired. They're sleeping in class, or they're supposed to be playing with their friends, but they're hyper vigilant, wondering what's going on at home. Should they check on their mom? Should they check on their siblings because it's a new baby in the house? Like all of these different things impact a child's development, right? Which is why it's so important for us to make sure the non-offending parent is kept safe. Too often we want to say, okay, non-offending parent, typically mom, what are you doing? Why aren't you protecting the family? We don't often say, person that's causing harm, why are you causing harm? Why are you creating an unsafe environment where this woman and these children are afraid? where they're living in fear, where kids are questioning whether or not they have access to food, not because food isn't in the house, but because you said they can't have it right now. And not in a way in which we tell kids, dinner's almost ready, you're going to be able to eat, but no, it's mine and you can't have it.
Yeah.
Right? That's abuse. That's harm. Right? And then when you think about whether or not the non offending parent is able to protect themselves and their children, there's so many factors that come into it, because when you talk about domestic violence, you're talking about a person has set up a dynamic where there is a constant threat of violence, physical and sexual violence, right? Like they have made you believe that if you don't do as they say and move the way they want you to move, you will experience physical harm in one way or another. And so when that is present and when that person has demonstrated their ability to carry out those threats and make that harm a reality, it makes it very difficult to find leaving as a viable option.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Tia Graham. My guest is Cherie Thomas. She is the co-executive director of the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Assault. We're talking about domestic violence during the winter months. Now, I do want to get to a clip because we talked about it just briefly, but we were talking about isolation. And Anne, she brought this up from Haven in Oakland, talking about the experience of survivors of domestic violence and its effects.
This is a very isolated experience. Abuse is a very isolated experience, and there's stigma. I still think that's around abuse in general. I mean, I hear so many times, why don't people just leave? Well, it's so hard to leave because there are so many layers and so many barriers. So it's not easy. And I think if we all could just have a little bit more compassion, a little more empathy, and a little more understanding, and try to understand, that this is not, we're talking, nearly 3 in 10 women and 1 in 10 men in the United States have experienced rape, physical violence, or stalking by a partner. And on average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. So this is not going away.
And listening to Anne, we were talking about, briefly just about isolation and what it looks like. And one thing that I thought about was this idea that you could leave whenever you want to. And this in the mindset of, hearing folks say, why didn't you just leave? And during the winter months, there are different circumstances. Like you said, the cold weather, maybe you have kids involved. Maybe there's no shelters available because of the cold weather. And then as well, right now, the financial situation that a lot of these nonprofits are facing due to the federal cuts. So we're seeing those starting to trickle down and impact these nonprofits. Just talk about isolation a little bit and what it looks like trying to get out of these situations.
Yeah, isolation is real. So one of the things people don't recognize or see very clearly is that you can be in a room full of people and be alone.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a scary place to be, particularly right now in this particular time of the winter months when we're talking about the holidays and things. You're surrounded by family and friends. You're all in close proximity to each other, right? If you are in an abusive relationship and that abusive partner is with you in those spaces, you are alone because they dictate who you can talk to, what you can talk about, and how you get to engage with people. And your family and friends may watch that person talk to you in a very disrespectful, very demeaning way and not intervene and not engage, right? And they're all looking at you like, why are you letting that person talk to you like that?
Yeah.
And you're looking at them like, oh my God, it's 15 of y'all. It's one of me. Somebody help me,
Yeah.
right? And nobody's helping. And what a lot of people don't realize is that person's already told you nobody's going to do anything. Nobody's going to say anything. I wish they would. What are they going to do? I will hurt all of you, right? So they've already told you all of these things. And now all of your family and friends who just don't know how to support are actually fulfilling everything that this person has said to you. Thus, you're more alone and you're more isolated, although there's 15 people in the room with you, right? I mean, you got to think you have a small statured woman, right? A large man, right? My husband's 6'5", 285. I'm 5'3", 150. right?
Yeah.
Now, if that man
Yeah.
decided, right, in a family function that he was going to talk out of the side of his neck to me, what are they going to do? How are they going to engage? How are they going to intervene, right? Because he's large stature, right? Now, I'm saying that there are some people that are very small stature that are super abusive.
Mm.
And there's a lot of big women that are with small men who are super abusive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mhm. And also, those dynamics do matter in whether or not people decide to say something, decide that they want to, say, hey, bro, that's not okay. Don't talk to Cherie like that, right? But abuse is a choice. It's a total choice. I've been married 30 years, and in that 30 years, never have I experienced violence from my partner because my partner is choosing not to be violent. It's a choice that he's making. And I bring that up to say because a lot of people think that the person who's being abused is just wanting it, right?
Yes.
You're just staying in it because no, I just so happen to be with someone who hasn't chose violence
Yeah.
as their way. Just so happen to be, right? Because also people don't tell us they're going to be abusive to us.
No.
They just don't. It's an insidious way in which it happens. And then you mentioned like all of the cuts and things that are happening at the federal level, they have been impacting us for a while. So all of our programs that provide domestic sexual violence and human trafficking services in the state receive funding from the state get these funds called VOCA funds, right? VOCA is the Victims of Crime Act. Those funds come to us from the federal government. Now, what's important for people to know is these are not taxpayer dollars because people like, oh, you don't pay more taxes. Yeah, don't worry about it. You're not paying any more taxes. This is not taxpayer dollars. This money comes from fines and fees from organizations and individuals who've committed crimes. That's where this money comes from,
Yeah.
right? So it's the bad guys paying for what they did, right? And then the funds are distributed to organizations like ours and our member programs, such as Haven, who are providing these vital services. What we've seen is a decrease of funds going in, right? And a decrease of funds going in mean a decrease of funds coming to us, right? And so our organization, the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, have been doing a lot of work with our member programs to actually go to our state and say, hey, state of Michigan, we're in your state, help us out. Fill this hole that is created from the federal government so women and children and men and LGBT individuals, anybody who's experiencing domestic violence during this time, can find safety and don't have to be fearful about being out in the cold in this time because there's no place to go.
And it's
And that's
becoming,
the reality of what we're facing.
I was going to say, it's an increasing reality for so many people, especially with what we have going on in our society today. And the last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is, family and friends and the way in which we could speak our language, the way we talk about it, the way we approach it. We talked a little bit before, but this idea of I reached out. I talked to this person about the situation. I've addressed it, but they don't want my help right now. So when that happens, what's our place?
Well, the first thing is I want to make sure that we don't minimize the impact on the family and friends too, right? Because it's a both and. Family and friends love their person. They do not want to see their person harmed. And they have frustration when they don't know what to do when they see their person being harmed, right? And they're like, hey, don't be in this situation. I see it. Don't do it. Walk away, run away, right? Get away. And you're like, what? No, this person loves me, right? You just don't understand. Be present. Tell that person when you are ready, I'm still here for you. I hope I'm wrong, but if these things are coming to fruition, if you are experiencing harm, you don't have to be afraid to tell me. You don't have to be ashamed. It's not your fault. And that's an important piece because people often feel like when they're experiencing violence, it is their fault. They should have saw the signs. They should have known because we spend a lot of time talking about signs, right? And in spending so much time talking about signs, we unintentionally blame the person for the harm that they're experiencing, right? Because some of the signs are things that we were grown up to look for in a partner.
I know.
someone who's taking care of all of the bills, someone where you don't have to worry about who's driving, all of those things, buying you a phone, like all of these things, right? You want a partner that has all of the resources. You don't have to work, you don't have to do anything. That's how a lot of women were reared, right?
Yeah.
And so then you get that, but it also comes with this additional layer that you didn't know about. It's not your fault because they presented the package first, right? And then after a while, they start separating you from your family and friends. After a while, they start talking demeaning to you. After a while, it may lead to physical and sexual violence, but those things don't happen immediately. But all that time that it's occurring, your autonomy is being taken away from you, right? Your ability to maintain your livelihood is taken away from you. And it takes a long time to rebuild credit when credit is destroyed. It takes a long time to find a job when you've been out of the job market. It takes a long time to file childcare because childcare is expensive.
And Cherie, we're getting out of here. 30 seconds. What are resources or some places or phone numbers that people can reach out to or to get help?
855-VOICES-4 is the statewide domestic violence hotline. And not only is it domestic violence, it's sexual assault and human trafficking, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And you can also text that same number.
One more time.
It's one for all. 855-VOICES-4.
Thank you so much to Cherie Thomas, the co-executive director of the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Cherie, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Coming up, the Museum of Contemporary Arts in Detroit is celebrating 20 years next year. We'll hear about what's next for MOCAD. That's right after this. It is the Metro.